Warning, the video you're about to watch is evil. There's nowhere you can run. There's nowhere you can hide. This video will find you, and it will hurt you. I've always been a huge fan of all things dark, edgy, scary, and evil. I like art that pushes the envelope and explores dark themes in creative ways, especially when it does so in a stylish way, either being super cool and fun or somber and thought-provoking. I love art that utilizes its fiction as a mainly emotional space rather than a logical one, where abstraction and surrealism are used to further immerse the viewer into the world, either to ratchet up the tension and dread or to embrace pure insanity. There's countless shows, movies, and games that use this approach to varying extents. These are works that I've always gravitated towards or found fascinating in some way. Works that capture the awe and wonder that can be found when delving into the ink-black ocean. In anime and manga, we have famous people like Junji Ito and his cosmic horrors, or the wickedly violent demons of Go Nagai's Devilman. We also have the haunting melancholy of shows like Boogie Pop Phantom, or the post-apocalyptic gothic nightmares of Vampire Hunter D. Film also has a wealth of dark and wretched works. First, the classic black and white Universal films that left an aesthetic legacy which many directors would eventually imitate. A favorite example of mine being Eraserhead, which is like a dark moving painting of blasted industrial landscapes. Also voted by many as the worst child-rearing video course. Games are no different. They're one of the most creatively liberating mediums when it comes to depicting the truly wicked. Today we'll be taking a look at the world of evil video games. Games that are wretched, dark, and occasionally edgy. When I say evil or dark, it's not a roundabout way of saying survival horror. In fact, many of these games are not even really horror. Sure, a bunch of them have some of those elements, but these are just games that I picked based on their art, sound, and vibe, not because they play like Resident Evil or whatever. I find that games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil often dominate horror-adjacent convos in a way that just kinda stifles discussion. So today we won't be talking about inventory puzzles or whatever. We'll just be coasting through some dark and wicked landscapes. Only rules are that the games must pique my interest and that they must be on the PS1, for scope reasons. We'll cover other platforms some other day. Maybe then I'll talk about Illbleed. Basically, these are games that when you see them, you will say to yourself, wow, that's fucking evil. Before we begin, I would first like to run through some honorable mentions. These are games that definitely have evil aspects to them, but I either didn't have too much to say about them or I felt that they weren't quite dark/evil enough for the main video. The Clock Tower games have always been pretty dark and twisted, but Clock Tower Ghost Head, aka Clock Tower 2 The Struggle Within, goes a step further. The game already has a pretty heavy atmosphere and sense of looming danger, but that's not what I care about. You see, the game's protagonist, Alyssa, is not just your typical schoolgirl. She so happens to be under the thrall of an evil spirit named Bates. Throughout the game, Bates will take control of your character and make her do wicked, evil things. And just listen to this fucking guy.
Hurry, run! No, don't come out.
Hurry up, old lady. Get the hell out of here. The little twerp. I'll kill her next time.
It's some Dark Urkel tribute shit. Some real, bona fide evil shit. I love it. Unfortunately, Clock Tower Ghost Head is very tedious to play through, so I really didn't want to subject myself to it. Galarians is a game I really wanted to put here given its incredibly stylish and moody visuals, but unfortunately I didn't feel like it met my evil quota, falling a hair short. That being said, just look at these cold, clinical environments. This is not a place you'd like to wake up in. Evil things are done here. Is that a flesh computer? Mommy.
Nice.
𝐃𝐀𝐑𝐊 is absolutely cooking with its visuals and music. Look at these enemy designs, goddamn. I do think 𝐃𝐀𝐑𝐊 is a bit more of a goth game though, and definitely deserving of its own video. I'm not sure if I'll ever make a goth games video, but who knows? Only time will tell. Maybe I could put Shadow Hearts in there. The Vampire Hunter D game is totally my kind of shit. But like with 𝐃𝐀𝐑𝐊, it's definitely way more of a goth game. It's so gorgeous though, and so moody. D himself moves with such style and flair. I was really tempted to put it on the list when I first saw a screenshot of his left hand. God damn. While the game itself is not quite radiating dark and twisted energy, it's definitely radiating those somber goth vibes, with a tinge of post-apocalyptic opulence. It's super cool.
So, there's 𝐄𝐕𝐋 and the Marcus brothers who are after him. All the pieces are in place.
So it seems.
𝐃𝐀𝐑𝐊, the legendary castle. I thought it had already fallen to ruin. I wonder what brought 𝐄𝐕𝐋 here.
Now, onto the main list. But before that, allow me to switch into my special form. Evil Maria. That's right. Now we can really start the show.
フド、これを被ってくれ。これを被らなければ、父の自殺の意味がわからない。外すな、見るんだ。しっかり見てくれ。それが悪魔の世界だ。
The first game on the list is the Japan-exclusive DEVILMAN game, published by Bandai in 2000. This one is particularly interesting because of the way it handles the dichotomy between Akira, the pubescent schoolboy, and Amon, the powerful demon warrior. The game splits these two phases into literal modes of play, the first being a slow, creeping adventure through a haunted house, the latter being a gory, meaty beat-em-up. In the manga, we don't actually spend too much time with pre-transformation Akira. In fact, he attains his Devilman form within the first volume, after the wild Black Sabbath party in which Ryo just fucking stabs a bunch of people. This game actually differs a lot from the manga and the 1987 OVA. In Devilman the game, you actually spend the first 2-ish hours as Akira, running around Ryo's father's mansion. At this stage in the game, you solve simple lock and key puzzles, scavenge for resources, and hide from pursuers. Yes, this game includes some demons that are not there in the original story. Aw, kitty.
お前、無事だったのか。
Oh my god. Dealing with the monsters is really interesting. For example, the spider lady you face at the start of the game is completely blind. She follows the sounds you produce, those being footsteps, door opening sounds, jumps, or the grandfather clocks. Akira will have to either slowly walk or crawl around to avoid alerting her.
If you could start crawling on the floor and making some noise, that would be so beautiful. Crawl on the floor and cry like a little baby.
This first area is really special. The mood here is excellent. The creepy, overbearing ambient music, coupled with the eerie background noises and creaky floorboards, as you slowly walk into an abyssal darkness where all manner of horrors may hide. This shit's got straight up cobwebs. Wow, YouTube indie horror game reference? All of this changes when you are finally reborn. Man, this transformation goes hard no matter what medium it's in. In your post-Devilman state, the game radically changes control schemes, so a lot of your old buttons are now dedicated to attacking, either as Akira or as Amon. You no longer have an inventory, the new, bolder, more evil Akira not really prioritizing the rationing of healing items or keys. And, man, look at this fucking guy, reading his gay little newspaper all pissed off. Dude should be at the club. Since the game is now a beat-em-up, you're under the constant threat of demons looking to get violent. Fortunately, Akira is strong as shit, even in humanoid mode. As for Amon, the way his transformation works is that you have to beat up guys in order to charge your SP bar. Once it's all glowy and shit because of the violence, then you can initiate evil mode. Yeah, dude's huge as shit, and he craves blood. You can dodge and block stuff, but I mostly just button mashed through the combat. It ain't too bad, and the cheesy gore effects do a lot for me. These environments also do a lot for me. They are so grimy and pixelated. They look really good for the time, honestly. Sure, I'm playing this upscaled, but still. Those demon freaks are great too. They come in all shapes and sizes.
All the stars are here!
The bosses also look and sound great. The first one you fight is the mud wall monster thing. You know, the one that fuses people to walls. That one. It ain't too bad, but listen to this fucking music. That's some dark, twisted, evil shit, and I love it. Speaking of evil, this game has some of the hardest box art ever. I could not resist using this render of Amon for the thumbnail. Like, dude, the fucking bump mapping, the wicked grin, the goddamn font they used for Devilman, peak Y2K shit. I really loved Devilman. Maybe it's my attachment to the source material or the downright wicked vibes on this thing, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. I played like 6 hours of it. Sure, it's repetitive, but it's dope. The way it ludo-narrativizes its own mechanics to reflect the ever-changing psyche of Akira as he becomes Devilman is really fucking cool. And the game has a bunch of fun little mechanics on top of that, like the way you use crates, sound, etc. It's real nice. I don't think there's an English patch for it, but who knows, maybe in the future. It's not like you really need it, honestly. But yeah, check it out. In the year 2000, we also got Nightmare Creatures 2, which is a game I think about a lot. Developed by Callisto and published by Konami, it's a huge tonal departure from the first game. That one being very creepy and gothic, while NC2 just goes full-on freak mode. Of all the games in this video, it is absolutely the most of its time. This thing has fatalities.
Fatality!
The fucking restraint it took for me not to paste the "with music by Rob Zombie" sticker on the video's thumbnail is biblical. I'm not even sure if I can play the intro due to possible DMCA reasons.
Fatality!
It's just a montage of gory kills set to Rob Zombie music. This game kind of flies in the face of what I said earlier about style. In fact, it represents a kind of horror fandom I don't personally jive with, that being the Rob Zombie House of a Thousand Corpses gorehound type of stuff. This game is fucking grungy, man. If it wasn't for the PS1 visuals, it would probably be really off-putting. I find it so fascinating that your protagonist is this disheveled, raggedy, tormented freak of a man. Like, you want to talk about art working purely on emotions? This game is absolutely trying to convey a vibe to you. That being the kind of murky, violent 90s comic book vibe in which this would be a fitting protagonist. And, damn it, Nightmare Creatures 2 kinda makes it work. Herbert here is animated with such attention to detail, such joy, that it almost feels like a precursor to Luigi in Luigi's Mansion. It's bordering on tech demo shit. Hell, this whole game is. These environments are so well rendered in all their ugly, muddy detail. There are straight up cloth physics and weather effects. God damn. Nightmare Creatures 2 is putting so much effort into painting its world. It just happens to be a world I don't personally resonate with very much. The fatalities, Rob Zombie music video vibes, scrunky Scrimblow Man protagonist, etc. They aren't the kind of stuff I'd usually be down with. Having said that, this thing is so goofy and so funny to me on like a conceptual level that I kind of love it, even if I can't stomach playing it for more than an hour.
Oh, quick fatality!
Yeah!
Yeah, you fatality him!
Hell Night is definitely not as angsty as something like Nightmare Creatures, but it definitely is mysterious. With this game, we enter the slightly more somber part of the collection, less about in-your-face loudness and more about isolation and dread. This one was brought to us by Atlas in 1998, and it's unlike anything else from the era. It's a first-person exploration horror game where you have to escape from a singular pursuer, all while solving point-and-click mist puzzles in this awful underground complex. It takes place in the Mesh, which is like a huge bunker underneath Tokyo. In the Mesh, you can find living quarters with people of all sorts. It has this heavy, post-apocalyptic Scandinavian sewer dungeon vibe to it that I kind of dread. It doesn't help that the pre-rendered areas you visit all look like boiler rooms. It's incredibly evil. This entire game feels like a nightmare, a really bad kind of nightmare. You toss and turn in bed at 4 in the morning until you wake up covered in sweat, every detail of the dream fuzzy and half-remembered, like a collection of dark shapes and hues, the only remaining fragment being an afterimage of this thing in your peripheral vision. Hell Night owns, actually. I didn't play much of it because it was honestly kind of uncomfortable, but it's definitely got some really cool stuff going on. Like I mentioned, the game has a singular pursuer that constantly evolves throughout the story, starting out as this strange puppet zombie thing, then changing into a more xenomorph-like design, etc. The sounds it makes as it stalks you are really unsettling. The game has party members too. Well, only one at a time. You switch them out by letting them get killed, since they act as a meat shield basically. When the monster attacks, it will first target them, giving you a grace period. The girl you start the game with pretty much dies in a single blow, but later characters can use defensive maneuvers a few times. It's incredibly creative. You could argue this kind of pioneered the first-person defenseless horror genre, but I wouldn't know about that since it kinda sold like shit. Plus, I'm more into the idea that multiple artists can have similar ideas independently, rather than earlier instances of something having a kind of monopoly on novel concepts. I get that a lot of people love categorizing stuff in that way and building timelines or whatever, but I don't think Hell Knight influenced Outlast or Amnesia. Wait. This is a Japan and PAL region exclusive. Maybe it did influence Amnesia. Or Penumbra. Well, who knows? Europe's the most mysterious region. Well, if you like the idea of wandering around a giant freezing sewer bunker while avoiding a shocker cyborg and solving simple puzzles, definitely give Hell Knight a shot. Just try not to get jump scared by the fucking NPCs, they got me several times. Baroque is one of the coolest games ever made. I don't even know where to begin with this one. For starters, the entire intro cutscene goes incredibly hard and really sells the motifs and imagery of the game. Then it drops you into this visually striking and moody world, surrounded by freaky NPCs and a hostile landscape. It all feels very laser-focused. The game is a dark and evil dungeon crawler where you plunder the depths of the Nerve Tower. In the tower, you can find weapons and treasures as well as hideous freaks called grotesques. The fish guys remind me of those dream demons from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6. Each floor of the Nerve Tower is fairly small, but they get more and more dangerous with each subsequent level. Some of these floors are genuinely horrible to navigate, in the best way possible. Baroque is a pure post-apocalypse story, similar to SMT. It's set in a ravaged world where mutated humans roam the land, those being the aforementioned grotesques. The game's narrative is pretty low-key and obscure, so a lot of it feels vague but in a really effective way. You're guided by this archangel character that gives you a fucking laser rifle and tells you to fulfill your duty. I think he wants you to destroy whatever the hell this is, but I'm not too sure. As for narrative progression, Baroque will give you new dialogue and interactions every time you die in the Nerve Tower. That's right, it's one of those games where player deaths are canonical, and apparently of some significance. Baroque feels truly evil and kind of hostile in a palpable way. Exploration alone is a constant drain on your resources, since your vitality and health quickly drain over time, unless you're attacking and killing grotesques. Pair that with the multiple status effects and other RPG mechanics, or the enemies that just steal shit from you, and you really feel like you walked into the wrong part of town. Or woke up in the wrong part of town. I said that HELLNIGHT feels like a nightmare. Well, Baroque is a nightmare. The entire game operates on a sort of dream logic, something that makes sense in the moment but is otherwise completely incomprehensible. That and the oddly consistent audiovisual motifs make Baroque feel haunting. I like to see the nerve tower as kind of like a giant exposed nerve ending connected to this sleeping underground god whose body you need to infect and destroy from within, your presence in that body being invasive and transient by definition, like a drop of water perpetually falling on a hot surface and dissipating over time, over and over, for an eternity. This transient nature, coupled with the fact that the game basically rewards you for dying, make Baroque surprisingly addicting and fun to play, despite all the evil horrors. I'm playing the fan-translated PS1 version here, but the game initially released on the Saturn. It later got remade for the PS2. Man, if you could hear the fucking noise I made when I first booted up the PS2 version, this right here is just incredible. Kinography. I adore everything about the remake. Yes, it does change the atmosphere and tone somewhat drastically, but in ways I find really fun. Besides, it never loses the stuff that truly matters, the imagery. Stuff like the horned girl, the crooked man, the tower in the distance, and that fucking howl. Oh, what's that? Yeah, it's in third person. It's also a character action game now. Okay, not actually, I just wanted to get a reaction out of you. Jokes aside, the game is definitely more action-oriented now. While kinda janky, I really enjoy this choice and think it gives it a distinct flavor when compared to the original. That's not to say purists won't have fun, though, since you can actually switch back to first person for what is mostly an updated version of the original. Well, I wouldn't know for sure, maybe there are some other huge changes, but I really like it. God, this fucking music. I might eventually make a full video on the PS2 version, but we'll see. For now, consider this a glowing endorsement of all things Baroque. Okay, that was fun and all, but it's time to get serious again. Because we have one last evil game we must endure, the darkest and evilest of them all. If evil games were a chemical, Shadow Tower would be the most concentrated distillation of that chemical. A game so basic, so pure, yet so utterly evil, that it can be genuinely off-putting. It's skeletal. When I first set out to make this video, I didn't set out to simply make a list of survival horror games, or games that are really difficult and punishing, because I thought that would be kind of boring. I mostly used the atmosphere and visuals as a starting point and then followed my gut from there. Having said that, Shadow Tower is all of the above. Sure, if you've played the Kingsfield games, it's not that bad, but it certainly ups the ante, now having fast weapon degradation, deadlier enemies, and way less resources. Plus, I don't think all punishments have to be mechanical. Sometimes being put in an unpleasant environment or being made to face a horrible creature can be a punishment in and of itself. This game says goodbye to the grassy fields and quaint dungeons of yore and puts you in a far darker, wetter, uglier place. If you were to frame this dive into the PS1's evil games as us jumping into a dark hole, Shadow Tower is what would be at the very bottom of that hole, past the Hell Knights, past the nightmare creatures, just lying there, old, primeval, unknowable, a thing of legend. There is nothing else at the bottom of that hole. No sound, no light, only things. Dark and wretched things. Things that you wish you could unsee. Creepy, crawly, eldritch things. You know those parts of Berserk where Guts and the gang enter some evil cave and it's just full of the worst freaks you've ever laid eyes on? That's Shadow Tower. But instead of being some almighty warrior with a sword large enough to cut through an SUV, you're just a guy. A nobody with dwindling resources and weapons that give Tears of the Kingdom a run for its money. A lone fool left to wander the dark depths of the Shadow Tower like a blind mouse, perpetually tormented by the awful sounds of what lies just beyond sight. Wait, what?
I don't care if you're human, as long as you're a customer.
Finally, a real ally. Putting Shadow Tower right here at the end might be weird for some, given that it's not really obscure or as interesting as some of the other games I mentioned, but I felt it was fitting. Not sure why, but there's something about it. Maybe it's the minimalistic design that kind of speaks for itself, or the excellent title screen and presentation. Shadow Tower is definitely a game most people remember, even if it's not the most thrilling to play. Wow, I can't believe it. I really did it. I talked about a FromSoft game for longer than a single sentence without making a single mention of Evergrace. Oh, by the way, a quick Evergrace pro tip, when you're at this point in the game, you really need to, it's really important that you buy yourself armor, like, you really need, it's expensive, but And that concludes today's look at some of the PS1's most evil games. I kept the scope pretty limited for this one. I honestly could have talked about HELLNIGHT or stuff like that, but those are more haunted than evil. They're very understated. I could probably turn this into a series, going console by console and finding the most twisted games on the platform, or just spin this off into a retrospective on RPG Maker horror games or something. Okay, this has been fun and all, but I can already hear some people asking why. Why the blood and monsters? Why the darkness? Why the face hand? Why the evil? And I get it, a lot of people find stuff like this really unpleasant or uncomfortable. Some people don't think it's fun to be chased by a giant spider demon through a haunted mansion. Some people don't find it amusing to be stuck in a hellish tower, forced to die and reincarnate over and over again. That's absolutely fair. Why though? Because it's fun. Because it's cool. Because darkness, be it gothic, be it angsty, can be stylish and alluring. Because to some of us, these things are comforting, either because we grew up with them or because we connect with the underlying themes. Some of us just find comfort in edgy and evil things because of unresolved trauma or life experiences that just make our brains click with that media in just the right way. The emotions that can be explored through scary or otherwise dark media are valid. They are feelings worth diving into and deconstructing in the relative safety of fiction. Just like how joy, romance, sadness, and loss are emotions worth unraveling, I think fear, regret, anxiety, and torment can be just as important. Admittedly, there's a lot of horror-adjacent stuff that I don't particularly enjoy, and I'm not always in the mood for something dark or evil. It's just something I dip into once in a while. I grew up on old Hammer films, grindhouse stuff, survival horror and RPG Maker games, Cinemassacre's Monster Madness, as well as the YouTube horror game boom. All of those things partially made me who I am. Of course, they're going to be my comfort zone. It's just how nostalgia works. That's not to say I don't also enjoy traditionally happy and comfy things. Of course I do. But the point of this just hang on a moment. Okay, I just got a few notes from my editor here. Apparently this whole ending bit is too preachy, so listen, if you didn't like this video, I'll meet you halfway with a little gift. I made you a tasty burger. That ought to cheer you right up. Just, go ahead and get a bit closer. Come on.